Some songs from the first notes make you feel like you could kick a door down, and this is one of those songs. Let's go, girls.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
It's a struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman.
People have to get used to the fact that country isn't just cows and hay and farm and stuff like that. It's not just that. Country music is just a way of life. It's just a type of music that we can live our day-to-day lives by, and I think that's why so many people are relating to it. I mean, I think it's easy to drive your kid to daycare and listen to country music, but it doesn't mean that it has to be about a bar fight or about, I don't know, tears in the bottom of your glass, or it doesn't have to be about that. And I think people are just getting used to that, used to the fact that it can be just about anything, really.
Those are the immortal words of the one and only Shania Twain. Shania Twain is without a doubt the greatest Canadian country singer of all time, and arguably the person responsible for helping country music cross over into the mainstream. Personally, I think if she did decide to sing about cows and hay, it would still be a hit. Shania was born Eileen Regina Edwards in Windsor, Ontario on August 28, 1965 to parents Sharon and Clarence Edwards. I was going to call her Eileen from now on, but it just makes me think of the song and it's too confusing, so let's go with Shania. At a very young age, Shania's mom moved her and her two sisters, Jill and Carrie Ann, to Timmins, Ontario, following a divorce from her dad. 2 years later, her mom would marry a man named Jerry Twain and give birth to their son, Mark. Yes, they named him Mark Twain. The couple would also adopt Jerry's infant nephew, Daryl, when his mother died. But the Twain family chose to simulate the Brady Bunch and reject the notion of step-parents and siblings. They were simply one big family. Jerry Twain was a full-blooded Ojibwe from the Mattagami First Nation. Upon adopting Shania and her siblings, they were legally given Indian status and recognized as members of the Tamagami First Nation. Sharon would tell her children that they had native blood in her biological father's family. However, that was not true. That side of the family came from French and Irish descent. But both Jerry and Sharon identified their family as Indigenous peoples. Years later, after she had become a star, Shania would be confronted about her birth father and questioned about her status. In a statement, she explained that she only knew one father, saying, "My father, Jerry Twain, went out of his way to raise 3 daughters that weren't even his. For me to acknowledge another man as my father, a man who was never there for me as a father, who wasn't the one who struggled every day to put food on our table, would have hurt him terribly. We were a family. Stepfather, stepbrothers, we never used that vocabulary in our home. To have referred to him as my stepfather would have been the worst slap across the face to him." Shania discovered a love for music at a very young age. She started singing when she was 3, and at the age of 8, after the family relocated to Sudbury, she would sing in the school choir, at community centers, and senior citizens' homes. But the real opportunities came performing late at night in local bars. She would tell The Big Issue, "From the age of 8, I would go singing folk and country songs at clubs on the weekend, sometimes even after midnight till 2 or 3 in the morning on a school night. I didn't enjoy being in those places at all. I developed a lot of stage fright. Sometimes there were strippers going on before me, and by the time I went on, everyone in there was quite drunk. It wasn't an environment for a child, I'd say so. I didn't want to perform in public, but my mother was trying to help me get exposure so that I could eventually become a professional singer." Growing up in Timmins wasn't easy for Shania and her family. They lived in poverty and were forced to make do with little, like wearing rubber boots throughout the winter and often going to school without lunch. The family meals would consist of goulash and what they called a poor man's sandwich, bread with only mayonnaise or mustard. But there was also abuse in the Twain home. In her 2011 memoir, From This Moment On, she would detail the emotional and physical abuse she and her mother suffered at the hands of her father, Jerry. So trigger trigger warning here. On one occasion, he plunged her mom's head into the toilet, leaving her unconscious and Shania thinking that she was dead. She also wrote about how he sexually molested her when she was a teenager. Eventually, she would convince her mom to leave her father, and the family ran away to Toronto, where they would stay in a battered women's shelter for a year. But Sharon did return to her husband in Timmins. In an interview with ABC's Nightline, Shania would say her dad could be two different people. It was the Jekyll and Hyde in him that was the greatest torture. I loved him and I respected him so much for what he did for us. Being the hard worker, he set a great example. So I'm still left confused. I'm baffled by all of that. I really am. Shania was insecure around other kids her age. She was too embarrassed to bring any friends home where they could see how her family lived. But she would find solace in her music, and it was definitely taking her places. Her mom would book her on any type of show she could find, and then at the age of 14, she made a memorable appearance on CBC's The Tommy Hunter Show, where she would be introduced as Ellie Twain. Around this time, her family moved back to Timmins to start a reforestation company, where she would spend her summers over the next few years working. Here she is telling Much Music's Bill Welichka about her time planting trees.
It was a tough job, that's for sure. It's a lot of college students and university students do it during the summer. But we did it every year for 5 months a year. And not only did I do it for such a long period of time, but when we go out to plant, we don't come into town every day. A lot of people that plant, they plant for the ministry and they go out on the bus in the morning. They plant for the day and then they come back into town at night. But we never did that. We've camped out because we were all in these very remote areas, miles from any town. So
when she was at Timmins High and Vocational School, she began singing for a local band called Long Shot, covering songs by Journey, REO Speedwagon, and Bryan Adams, who we'll hear from later. She learned how to balance performing with the band at night and writing songs with her schoolwork. But as soon as she finished high school, Shania got the hell out of Dodge. Instead of attending her prom, she gave her dress to a friend and headed out on tour to play covers with a band called Flirt from Sudbury. After a tour of Ontario, she would end up in Toronto, where she was ready to begin a new chapter in her life. In order to survive in the big city, Shania was forced to take on odd jobs during the day, like working the drive-thru at McDonald's. At night, she would play any gigs she could find. After receiving an invitation from vocal teacher Ian Garrett, who taught at the Royal Conservatory of Music, Shania began taking lessons to learn how to sing properly, and in return, cleaned his house to pay for the lessons. A Toronto DJ named Stan Campbell soon discovered the 19-year-old singer and wrote about what he witnessed in the Country Music News. She would have been Eileen at the time, so he wrote, "Eileen possesses a powerful voice with an impressive range. She has the necessary drive, ambition, and positive attitude to achieve her goals." Campbell would bring Shania into the studio to record backing vocals for a song he was producing by a radio host and soft rocker, Tim Dennis. The song is called Heavy on the Sunshine, and honestly, you should check it out. Some major yacht rock vibes on that one. Around the same time, an established country singer-songwriter by the name of Mary Bailey discovered Shania singing some Willie Nelson and Hank Williams songs in Sudbury. The two had actually first met when Shania opened for Bailey when she was only 11, but this time she saw a confident woman on stage and was impressed by the songs she sang of her own. Bailey would put her own music career on hold to become Shania's new manager. When she was 22, Shania started attending school for computer programming in what she considered a backup plan if music didn't work out for her. Smart. Her life would change drastically, though, on November 1st, 1987, when her parents, Sharon and Jerry, were killed in a car accident near Wawa, Ontario. Immediately, the responsibility for raising her younger siblings was left up to Shania. Her older sister Jill already had a family of her own, so Shania had to move back home to look after Carrie Ann, Mark, and Daryl. Here she is on the Today Show with Hoda Kotb.
My younger sister was still living at home, and my two younger brothers were still, 13 and 14 years old. And I didn't, we all agreed that they shouldn't be separated. But it was, no relatives were able to take both of them in. So the only way to keep them together was for us to stay together.
Shania had already taken on the role of a parental figure with her younger siblings, but now she had to be a full-time mom and take on all of the responsibilities of keeping the household functioning. Thankfully, her manager told her about a gig working as an entertainer at the Deerhurst Resort. So she moved the family to nearby Huntsville and began singing in a musical production called Viva Las Vegas. It was here where she would learn how to perform on stage as part of a big show. In her 2022 Netflix documentary, Not Just a Girl, Shania would look back at her time working at Deerhurst saying, "It was pretty scary. I didn't really know what I was doing at all. I had no idea how to sing and wear high-heel shoes, for example, at the same time. I had to learn fast because this was now my new job. I was busy rehearsing, running the kids back and forth. Before and after the show, I would go home and write. There was no other way to get ahead except working my ass off, really. That was it. There was no other way. All I could do was keep working, keep demoing, keep writing, and hoping I would get a break." Despite her busy schedule, Shania didn't give up her dream of becoming a recording artist. In her first interview with Much Music, she would tell Bill Welichka,
It came to the point where I really thought, okay, I've done enough performing as an artist without any product. I wanted to have a product to promote the next time I got on stage. I thought, when I get up on that stage, I want to be singing my own stuff. And I want to be singing things that people know that are mine. Shania Twain, this is Shania Twain, this is her single, and whatever it would be. At the time, of course, I didn't know. But I thought, it's just something, it's time for change. And I called up my manager at that time. She wasn't my manager yet. She was just a lady that I'd known for many years in the music industry. And I said, I really feel it's time that I start recording. I need to get out. I want to get out to more people. And the only way to do that is get on the radio. And you don't get on the radio unless you got a record. And so she said, well, let me see what I can do. And country music was where I felt the most comfortable. So I didn't even question where I wanted to go as far as a recording artist. That was where I wanted to go.
After a few years at Deerhurst, her youngest siblings were now old enough to leave home. It was time for her to take a chance and pursue her dream.
A lot of people ask me, why country? Why did I pick country music? Because a lot of people know that I've done all kinds of music, and it's one of those things where I've gone full circle. And country was my roots, and I sang country for so many years as a child that I did the natural thing as a teenager, branching off and experimenting with all kinds of music, rock and R&B, and there was country, and there was a lot of Christian music and everything. And then when I decided to record, I ended up going, to become a recording artist. I went full circle back to country, and that's my circle story.
Shania decided to focus on country music as a singer and a songwriter. So her manager, Mary, began passing on her demo to music industry folks in Nashville. An entertainment lawyer named Richard Frank was interested and came to see her showcase at Deerhurst. Impressed by her performance, he went back to Nashville and connected her with some producers named Nora Wilson and Harold Shedd, who had worked with Billy Ray Cyrus. Soon, she signed a contract with Polygram Records, which would eventually change its name to Mercury Nashville for its country artists. But there was one thing she had to do before anything. The label wasn't big on the name Eileen Twain, which would have been her name at the time. So she needed a new name. Appearing on Apple Music's Home Now Radio, she explained just how Eileen became Shania, saying, "A lot of celebrities are born with a different name than they end up with as a stage name, and I'm one of those people. It's actually a long story. In short, I was born Eileen Regina Edwards, and then I was adopted and I became Eileen Regina Twain. Then I became a professional singer, and I needed a stage name that sounded a little less like my grandmother's name because I'm named after my grandmother, both my grandmothers, Eileen and Regina. I think in my mind, I was just not really wanting to be called my grandmother's name on stage, so I decided to change it to Shania Twain. I met somebody with the name Shania, thought it was beautiful, and Shania Twain was born." I love that. It's a good thing I never had to change my name. It would have taken me forever to decide. Naming my daughter was, to this day, the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Hopefully she doesn't want to change it later. Anyway, the name Shania, by the way, means I'm on my way in the Ojibwe language, and that was definitely a good indicator for what was to come for the 26-year-old singer. She moved down to Nashville to begin working on her debut album. Shania would describe her experience as feeling like the newbie in town, trying to find her way as an original artist without being kicked out of town. Almost immediately, Shania learned that she didn't quite fit in. Her label felt her songs weren't quite country enough, so they brought in some external songwriters to help her put together an album. Released on April 20th, 1993, Shania Twain's new name, self-titled debut album, would immediately fail to find much of an audience and only reached number 67 on the U.S. Country Albums chart. In her Netflix documentary, Shania admitted, "There's not really that much of my creative input in the album at all, other than just the way I sang things or the way I phrased things, that sort of thing in the studio. Even that didn't leave me any room because they were 3-hour sessions. I had no room to be creative. I had no room to experiment and grow into the project." She did, however, find one way in which she could express herself, through her album cover. Here she is with Bill Welichka.
This is where I come from. This was shot in my hometown. This was shot in Timmins, Ontario, in a farm field where I'm from. And that is me. I mean, now, not Canada necessarily, because I know even here we don't get a lot of snow, but where I'm from we do. I'm from 500 miles north of here. So we get that snow. It's real. Mind you, there's been a lot of people in Nashville that has done the exact opposite of what you're thinking and said, "Now, is that fake snow? Is that wolf superimposed? Is that real?" Yes, that is real. It's all real and is where I'm from.
Mercury tried to help raise her profile by signing her up for a tour across America called Triple Play, featuring 2 other new artists on the label, Toby Keith and John Brannon. But considering there weren't too many female country artists from Canada that had made it in Nashville till that point, and by not many, I mean 0, it didn't do much to help. In fact, the only real publicity Shania struck up with her first album was when the video for her first What Made You Say That was banned by CMT for being too suggestive. This was all because Shania decided to channel her inner Madonna and Cindy Crawford by flashing some midriff, flirting with a shirtless guy, and embracing her sensual side. Gasp! All things that just didn't happen with women in country music at the time. Here is Shania talking to Much Music about What Made You Say That, bringing something new to the genre.
Well, I think that for country music, it's different. I think it's kind of refreshing because it's different. And videos in country are fairly new, really. It's really taking off now, and it's becoming a really great tool. And I think it's necessary. I think that the people need, especially in country music, they want to know the person that's singing that music. I think the whole look of it was just different. It was original and different, and I think that was refreshing to people.
While the music video was banned for a while in the US, it actually received a lot of airplay on CMT Europe, where it caught the eye of Robert Mutlang, one of rock music's preeminent producers for bands like AC/DC and Def Leppard. Based in London at the time, Mutt was looking to break into producing country music, and he was struck by Shania's beauty and her ability to sing differently from other country artists. He immediately knew that he had to work with her, so he got in touch. The two began to talk on the phone and became fast friends, bonding over his love of country and her love of rock music. They would first meet at the CMA Music Festival in June 1993 and quickly began collaborating on music together. While traveling throughout Europe, they began a whirlwind romance that culminated in a wedding on December 28, 1993, just 6 months after first meeting. The private ceremony took place at Shania's old workplace, Deerhurst Resort. Apparently, the champagne was non-alcoholic, and Lang dedicated Everything I Do It For You, his 1991 smash hit collaboration with Bryan Adams, to his new bride. Which would be very sweet, but you know the rest of that story. Or do you? I'm going to get to that later. Despite her debut album flopping, once the honeymoon was over, Shania was ready to begin working on new music. She was nearly dropped by Mercury Nashville, and her label was hesitant to let her work with Mutt due to his well-known history of rock and her sound already straying far enough from country. But after hearing some of their demos, they could feel the chemistry between the two and agreed to let Mutt sign on as the next album's producer. A lot of the songs Shania had already written beforehand in her remote cabin just outside of Timmins, expecting to use them for her debut album, but the label wouldn't allow it. This time would be different, though, working with Mutt, who had co-written mega hits for Michael Bolton, Hart, and Bryan Adams. The two would bounce ideas off each other and finish songs together, which gave Shania this whole other level of confidence in her songwriting. Here she is telling Much Music's Kim Clark-Champness about how Mutlang changed songwriting for her.
Mutt brought in an element that was fresh and new for country music, but was very sensitive to the sound of country music because he's such a big fan of country. And at the same time, I was always such a huge fan of, rock and pop and basically anything other than country. I mean, because I had grown up singing country music, it was almost like I would listen to other styles of music for inspiration to write country songs, if that makes any sense. You kind of have to get out of yourself every once in a while to get inspiration. And he does the opposite. So we would both tap into each other's styles of music for inspiration. So we really complement each other that way, and that's why you're hearing the balance is very unique.
Released on February 7th, 1995, Shania Twain's second album, The Woman in Me, came across like a breath of fresh air for country music. First single, Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under? An absolute bop. A fusion of pop and honky-tonk, it felt like Shania's real introduction. Reaching number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 11 on the U.S. country chart, and number 1 on the Canadian country chart. And the hits just kept coming. Her next single, Any Man of Mine, topped the country charts in both Canada and the U.S. The same happened with If You're Not In It For Love, I'm Outta Here, You Win My Love, and No One Needs to Know. All of a sudden, this radio-friendly pop sound Shania and Mutt had brought to country music was setting a whole new standard for the genre, and the press was taking note. Here's what Entertainment Weekly wrote just months after the release of The Woman in Me. Shania Twain may know how to write a hit single, but she sure doesn't know how to be a country star. She's from Canada, for one thing, and doesn't live anywhere near Nashville. Not once in a 5-hour interview does she thank God for her success. She doesn't even eat meat, for goodness sake. Granted, the 29-year-old singer's hair is on the big side, but what country music's star of the moment is mostly about is breaking stereotypes. I can't tell whether that was meant to be complimentary or not. I think it was. The Woman in Me would become the biggest selling country record of 1995 and eventually sell more than 20 million copies worldwide. Up until that point, it would also be the best-selling female country album of all time. Shania also won her first Grammy for Best Country Album and 5 Canadian Country Music Association awards. But once again, Shania sparked some controversy. Not over a racy video, but in choosing not to tour in support of her album. There was plenty of criticism and speculation that she was a manufactured product and couldn't actually perform live. Years later, she would explain the decision to Billboard, saying, "I didn't tour off The Woman in Me, and that was partly because I really felt I needed more powerful music under my belt to get out and do a really powerful show, and one where I wasn't doing any covers. I'd spent my whole career up until then doing covers to make a living. It was important to me to focus a lot on the songwriting and not to be touring at the same time. My mindset was, right now I'm a songwriter, I'm not a performer, I've got to put my performance side on hold and focus on being the best songwriter that I can be." Now 30 years old, Shania may have been a new kid on the block in country music, but with experience and maturity, she was already a veteran of the music industry. And she had more to prove. She was becoming a household name in country music and ready to take the next step. So she hired a new manager named John Landau, who had been pivotal in the career of Bruce Springsteen as his co-producer and manager. Yes, Shania was now sharing a manager with the boss. In the Netflix documentary, Landau would admit she wanted to cross over to pop, she wanted to be an international superstar, and she wanted to be an absolutely top touring artist. Those 3 goals, clear as a bell, first time I talked to her. Oh, I love her. Shania and Mutt got to work on a new album. They would write everywhere together, whether it was when they were bored at home, on the way to the grocery store, or, just chilling at Michael Bolton's house in New Jersey. That's where I do my best writing too. She was feeling some pressure over following up a record as big as The Woman in Me, but Mutt kept her grounded and gave her confidence. They used that confidence to make this album more diverse by leaning deeper into their rock and pop sides. They intended to only write write songs that had the potential to be singles and ended up with 16 in total, coming in at over an hour's worth of music. While not all 16 would be issued as singles, a whopping 12 of them were. That has to be some kind of record, right? Naturally, half of those songs would go on to become huge hits for Shania, including some ballads, which her label discouraged her from writing. But there was one song out of the bunch that really stood out, and it came from a desire to keep things lively. Basically, Shania was writing it to make sure she didn't get bored during her concerts. Here she is talking to Music Plus in 1997.
Actually, a lot of this album was written with the tour in mind because I wanted to have an energy to say things and to have a feel with the music that would translate very well live, because I didn't want to get bored night after night. I wanted to get out there and give the same energy every night. And so you have to have a certain type of music to be able to do that. And I do get bored very quickly, so I needed something exciting to say with attitude and something with a lot of expression. And something like Man, I Feel Like a Woman is the perfect example of that.
The genesis of Man, I Feel Like a Woman went all the way back to 1994, while Shania and Mutt were actually writing The Woman in Me. They were sharing ideas back and forth when she heard him play this one riff. Here she is explaining that moment to Vice.
We're at the breakfast table, and he's got this riff. That chug. You know, he's rocking away there on his groove. And he goes, come on, get into some phrasing. I start singing a melody, kind of bluesy. Down and down and down, down, down. It just felt natural. No lyrics yet. But Mutt says, I want the phrase to end with a signature hook. He was relentless with the groove and line till I came up with something. He'd play the riff and then stop and then say, you're on, it's you, bring the goods. Finally, he stops at the end of the riff and I say, Man, I Feel Like a Woman. He said, that's it, you got it.
Shania intended for the expression, Man, I Feel Like a Woman, to be a celebration of being a woman these days and how, quote, pretty darn fun it was. Hence, the first lyric after that iconic guitar riff is Shania announcing, let's go, girls. This song was meant to be a romp. I mean, obviously, it has 2 exclamation marks in the title, but it wasn't written exclusively about women. In fact, the inspiration behind the words came from her memories of performing at Deerhurst and watching the drag queens that performed at the resort. In her 2011 memoir, From This Moment On, Shania wrote, being inexperienced at applying makeup, I marveled at how artistic and glamorous some of the men were. They looked so gorgeous with features that had been defined and exaggerated with blushes, liners, shadows, and accessories. My fascination with this initial introduction to men transforming themselves into beautiful women likely sowed the seed of inspiration for a song I would write years later, Man, I Feel Like a Woman. So yes, it is about female empowerment, but not just that. This song was also about inclusion and providing a fun anthem for anyone and everyone. She would tell The Advocate, a lot of the stuff I do has such a feminine female perspective, but a powerful one. It's not only girl power, it's gay power. I think that song really stands for both. Man, I Feel Like a Woman was a hit from the moment everyone heard it. I mean, come on, it's irresistible. The combination of Mutt's hooky riff, Shania's frisky and confident vocals, and the catchphraseness of the chorus, not a word, but you know what I mean, all of this made it an immediate smash hit. Bryan Adams actually recently talked about his theory behind the opening of the song on his radio show. Here's what he had to say.
Back in the 90s, I was working with Mutlang. We were writing and producing songs together, and it was around that time that Mutt started working with Shania Twain. Mutt also really loved ice hockey, and so do I, and of course, being Canadian, I was super happy that he was into it as well. Now, he used to go to the games, and I can remember how much he loved all the crazy organ that happened in between songs. I often think that ice hockey is the reason why we got da-da-ba-da-da-da-da.
I mean, it does kind of have organ vibes, doesn't it? Maybe he's right. Now the only thing stopping the song from actually becoming a hit was releasing it. Shania's third album, Come On Over, was released on November 4th, 1997, led by the first single, Love Gets Me Every Time. The album followed in the footsteps of The Woman in Me and was huge, a massive country album that was even bigger than its predecessor. And by that I mean it was a full-on cultural phenomenon, not just of 1997 and 1998, but the entire decade. It went straight in at number 1 on the album charts in Canada and number 2 in the US. It's hard to believe this in 2025. But Mace's Harlem World sold 3,000 copies in its first week of release. But Man, I Feel Like a Woman wasn't even one of the album's first singles. It was the 7th official single from Come On Over. 7! Can you believe that? Released in March 1999, it came a full 16 months after the album came out. And at first, it was only for country radio in the US, but it picked up steam really fast and entered Billboard's Hot 100 6 weeks later, followed by the UK and the rest of the world. And that's the thing. Shania Twain was no longer just a sensation in North America. She was now a global superstar. Part of what made the song so iconic from the get-go was its music video. Directed by Paul Boyd, Shania flipped the script on one of the 80s most memorable music videos, Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love, which saw him perform with a band full of female models with pale skin, heavy makeup, and dark hair playing along to his song. For Man, I Feel Like a Woman, designer Mark Bauer wanted to do something unexpected, so he put Shania in a black suit with a top hat and a veil, leading a band of beefy male models in tight-chested tops and shiny pants playing along to her song. The homage to Palmer's video was an obvious eye wink, but with a heavy message of shouting out her femininity. And as expected, the music video caused a major stir in the country music industry. While the video was crossing her over even more into the mainstream pop market, country music wasn't too happy about it, but I mean, what else is new? In the Vivo footnotes for the video, Shania recalled how much flack she received from her peers. We were taking country music to a place it hadn't been before, and some people didn't like that. I remember the art department saying, "This is way too sexy. The women listeners are not going to like this. They're going to feel threatened." But Shania stuck to her vision and knew that women would totally get it. It's hilarious that they thought that we would feel threatened. I just rewatched the video, and all I feel is the need to find that outfit for myself. And also, I might start wearing a veil. So mysterious. And wouldn't you know it, Shania was right. Women did get it. And to this day, it remains her most popular video on YouTube, with close to 500 million views, plus one by me just now. She would even recreate the video when she performed at the 41st Annual Grammy Awards, but instead of models, she had her band dress up in costume. Oh, and in case you were wondering, this time Shania toured, and boy, oh boy, did it ever do big business. People were jonesing to see her live after she chose not to tour her previous album, and they came out in millions. In fact, more than 2 million tickets were sold for a tour that lasted 18 months over 1998 and 1999. It was the highest grossing tour by a female country artist at the time, and took home Country Tour of the Year in both 1998 and 1999 at the Pollstar Concert Industry Awards. It has been nearly 30 years since Come On Over came out, and its significance in country music history and music history in general cannot be overstated. To date, it has sold more than 40 million copies worldwide, and here are just some of its many notable achievements. It is the best-selling country album, the best-selling album by a Canadian artist, and the world's 8th best-selling album of all time. Since Nielsen SoundScan began tracking sales in 1995, it is the biggest-selling album in Canada in the past 30 years. Of all time, it is only behind Michael Jackson's Thriller. It's also the 9th best-selling album of all time in the US and the 16th of all time in the UK. And Guinness World Records officially recognized Come On Over as the biggest-selling studio album by a female solo artist, period. Did you get all that? Today, Shania Twain is recognized as one of the biggest artists of all time in any genre, and she has continued that success even after Come On Over. In total, she has sold more than 90 million albums in the past 30 years. Think about that. An artist whose debut album was completely ignored, who essentially came from nothing, went on to defy the odds and sell that many records. And in doing so, she broke down so many barriers for both country music and female artists, opening the door for country pop crossover artists such as Faith Hill, Taylor Swift, Carrie Underwood, Casey Musgraves, and Maren Morris. Of course, there is more to the story. Shania moved to Switzerland, had a son with Mutt in 2001 named Asia, and then divorced Mutt in 2008 after he had an affair with her best friend. And then 2 years later, she remarried the ex-husband of that best friend. I want to see the made-for-TV movie about that. It was kind of a spouse swap, but both couples are still together, so who knows? Maybe it was for the best. What I do know is that Man, I Feel Like a Woman has never lost its mojo. In the early 2000s, Chevy used it as an ad for its Colorado truck, featuring one guy singing along to the song inside the truck while his bros looked very confused. It's fine, but the premise is ridiculous because you know they would all be singing along. Britney Spears sang the song with her pals in her movie Crossroads, iconic film. And Shania herself surprised everyone at Coachella in 2022 when she joined headliner Harry Styles for a performance of Man, I Feel Like a Woman. That was pretty cool. And I'm sure Harry has done that song a few times at karaoke because just about everyone has, as Jennifer Hudson revealed when Shania visited her show. Check this out.
And Man, I Feel Like a Woman is the #1 karaoke song of all time.
I mean, come on.
How does that feel?
I think that is so cool. Certainly, I would never have imagined that, that I would ever have, the biggest karaoke song in the world. But I think it's, right? But I enjoy the compliment, and I can just imagine. Every person in the world can sing that song with an exclamation mark. It's just a statement kind of feel-good song.
It is a feel-good song. And we all love that song. Right?
Shania calls Man, I Feel Like a Woman a real pinnacle point in her career, but she also knows that song doesn't just belong to her, it belongs to everyone. In an interview with Billboard, she summed it up best when she said, Man, I Feel Like a Woman never gets old. The audience entertains me more than I entertain them, I think, on that song. There's a lot of gay men out there that just sing that song from the bottom of their heart, and they take it on as an anthem. It's got such a beautiful spirit in that sense. I just love it. Everybody gets into it in their own way, and it's got an anthemic quality to it that's so beyond what I ever could have imagined it would develop into. For men, for women. For women, it's their party song. It comes to life every night, and I don't think I'll ever get bored of it. Me either, Shania. Let's go, girls. I'm Ruby Carr, and that was Encore and the story behind Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman. Dun, dun, na, 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 na. I'm going to go kick a door down, but don't forget, we've got new episodes every Thursday, so don't miss next week.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.